Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Great to see you all. Thank you, Kathy. It is good to be back with you. Had a great short trip up to Montreal, Canada. First time up there. And for you partners, you should have received an invitation to the Zoom meeting this Saturday. I'll be happy to share more about that conference with you there. And if you are not a partner, no better time than now to sign up. There's a link in the show notes. Become a supporter of Cross Ministries, and you can join us for these Zoom meetings where we talk together more in depth on the things that we have been studying. So if you didn't receive that email with the Zoom link, let me know. It went out yesterday. So as you have noticed, if you saw the title here, we're starting 1st and 2nd Thessalonians today. You know, I was thinking through how to make this transition, what else we needed to cover. If you're new, if you've just joined us, if you just happened on to this because you're interested in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, we started a long time ago the road to Revelation, and we got there. We did Haggai, we did Zechariah, we did some portions of Daniel, and we did all of Revelation. And then we did 1 Corinthians 15, talking about the resurrection of Jesus and the resurrection of the dead. And through all of those studies, other passages came to mind as people said, what about this? What about this? What does this mean for this section? And so on. And there are so many of them. And I was going to hit them, but I really don't like to take verses or chapters even out of their context. So the next big one, in my view, is Paul's letters to the Thessalonians. There we have the passage in 1 Thessalonians, the passage that deals with what so many today think is the rapture, that the church is going to be taken off the earth, and then God is going to bring 7 years of tribulation upon the Jews and the Antichrist and all of that. So what I decided we're going to do is dive in and examine 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Now, I intend to cover both letters. I may not spend as much time on every verse as maybe I normally do in an exposition of a letter. I'm not going to just race through it, but the goal really is to get to those key passages, dealing with resurrection, with all the stuff that we're going to see. Another programming note, I'm going to be out of town next week in its entirety. My wife and I have to go and help her elderly parents make some changes and do some things, and that's going to take all of next week. So I'll just tell you on the front end here, you should go back and watch the series called The Kingdom and the Last Days. It's a playlist on YouTube. So next week, while I'm gone, watch that series. It will help solidify some of the things we're going to talk about this week. So I don't anticipate that we will get into the text of 1 Thessalonians too deeply this week because we have some preliminary work to do, and it's around what we're going to see in verse 10. So let me just jump in here to 1 Thessalonians 1, 9, and 10. By the way, this will be the very first time in 26, 27, 28 years of teaching the Word of God full time. This will be the first time that I have taught 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Because there are things in these letters that I just was so uncertain of. And all those other studies that I just mentioned that we've been through have answered questions for me. And that's why I'm excited to go through this with you together. So we'll see if we can make sense of it. But it's just, I've taught every other book of the New Testament many, many, many times in their entirety. And as you know, I've gone through all of Isaiah and Zechariah and Haggai and Old Testament history. I've taught most of the scripture, lots of Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs. I have taught that many times, but I never taught 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. So here we go, but we're only going to look at a couple verses here and go somewhere else for the moment. All right. So we'll come back and look at who this is talking about down the road. But they themselves declare concerning us what entrance we had to you. So this is, Paul and Silvanus and others talking to the Thessalonians. And here's what he says about those in Thessalonica: how you turned to God from the idols to serve a living and true God. So the Thessalonians were Roman, Greek people. They were idol worshipers, pagans. And Paul is excited because he said, we've heard how you turned from those idols to serve a living and true God. And then this is the verse that is key and raises key questions for these two letters. And to wait, so you've turned to serve a living and true God, and to wait for or expect for his Son, that is God's Son, from or out of the heavens. So already, most Christians hear that phrase, to wait for his Son out of the heavens, or to expect his Son out of the heavens. We have been trained to think this is what's called the visible bodily return of Jesus. As you can probably discern from how I'm describing this, I don't think that is what is going on here. But we will see as we go if I can make that case. So they have turned to serve a living and true God, and they're waiting. Remember, this is written to the Thessalonians. It is not written to you and to me. It's written to a group of Christians in the first century in a city called Thessalonica. And he says, you have turned from from idols to the living and true God to wait for his Son out of the heavens. They, in Thessalonica, were waiting for God's Son from the heavens. And then describing that Son, he says, whom God raised out of the dead ones, Jesus. And then this phrase, who is rescuing us, not you and me. That's not the us. Who is rescuing us from or out of the anger that is coming, or the wrath that is coming. That raises a question. What wrath, what anger was coming that Paul is concerned with to encourage the Thessalonians that they were going to be rescued out of it? What wrath was coming? So Jesus has been raised from the dead, and he's coming out of the heavens, or at least they're waiting for him out of the heavens. Doesn't actually say coming there. And Paul says, we are rescued from the anger that is coming. Now, it seems to me there are two predominant answers to the question, what wrath, what anger? Some believe it's the wrath that God is pouring out on Israel sometime in our yet future, that tribulation, that 7-year tribulation. And so the way in which he's rescuing us out of that anger is the rapture. So this would have no direct application to the Christians in Thessalonica in the first century. In other words, the original audience, this was not helpful to them. Right? If this is the church being raptured, and that's how they're going to be saved or rescued from the 7-year tribulation, which according to that thinking has not happened yet. Here we are almost 2,000 years later, and the tribulation has not yet come, and the rapture has not yet come. So for the Thessalonians, if I'm understanding it correctly, the Thessalonians received no benefit from this warning. So you Thessalonians have turned from idols to serve a living and true God and to wait for his Son from the heavens, but instead you are going to die because his Son is not coming back from the heavens for thousands of years in the future. And Jesus is rescuing us, but he's not really rescuing us. He's rescuing some generation thousands of years in the future from the 7-year tribulation that's coming on the Jews, because whoever is alive at that time is going to be raptured, taken from the earth. They're going to leave their clothes on the ground. If they're an airplane pilot, they're going to be taken out of the plane, and the plane's probably going to crash. Especially if you have a whole crew that's Christians, then that plane's just going to go down. Cars going to be crashing all over the place, because God's going to rescue that generation someday from the 7-year tribulation by taking them off the earth. I really don't understand how you could get there from this text, but that is a predominant view, isn't it? If that's not it, and it's not, then I think I saw a couple people, at least somebody mentioned maybe, Daniel says there, from God's final judgment, death, maybe. So, and that would tie into the resurrection, right? He does say that, waiting for his Son whom he raised out of the dead, who is rescuing us from the anger that is coming, from the wrath that is coming. So if that's the case, then it would be something like, you will still suffer the wrath of dying, but then you'll be raised out of it. So you'll be rescued out of that death and have resurrection life. It's possible. It's possible. I think that's got far more plausibility than the rapture tribulation dispensational view. But I think probably there's something else going on here. The wrath they would have been expecting, as I see it, is what we have seen again and again already in our previous studies. There was a coming wrath on Jerusalem, but then there was also going to be persecution of Christians by the beast, right? By the Roman Empire. And the question is, if he's talking about that, is the rescue here resurrection, or is it avoiding it altogether? So let's take a look at some of this, and we've been over this in pieces. I cover this in more detail in the Kingdom in the Last Days series that I would encourage you next week to watch while I'm gone. But let's take a look at some of this. So this is back in Luke 21. It's often called the Olivet discourse, but the Bible doesn't call it that. Theologians do. But Jesus is with some of his disciples, and he said, some were speaking about the temple, that it had been adorned with good stones and devoted things. Okay, so some folks are pointing out this temple that Herod had improved. He was quite the developer and builder, and he had taken the Jewish temple and made it an impressive structure. It was known all over the kingdom, all over the empire. And so someone is commenting on this temple and how beautiful and ornate it is. And Jesus said, these things that you behold, this magnificent temple, days will come in which there will not be left a stone on a stone that will not be thrown down. That is a jarring statement by Jesus. For the Jews, this is, similar to the White House for us in America. It's the symbol of our nation. It's not, if the White House were to be destroyed, if some nation were to come and, firebomb, send missiles and destroy the White House, we may have the technology now to have advance warning and everybody flee and the president rescued, and the death total may not be that high, but the symbolism would be devastating for us as Americans. And then if you added to it a religious component, for the Jews, this is where God dwelled. Right? This is the house of God. So it has sort of a political significance, but far more importantly, it has a religious significance. It's their stability. It's their hope. It's been the place that gave them their identity as God's people for centuries and centuries. And Jesus says, the days are coming when this magnificent structure is going to be demolished and there won't be one stone left upon another. Well, this got the attention of his disciples, and they questioned him, saying, "Teacher, when then will these things be, and what is the sign when these things may happen or are about to happen?" So they understand the significance, and they want to know when and what is going to signal that the temple is going to be destroyed. Now, I want to look at Matthew's account of this. He says many similar things in Matthew 24, as Luke says in Luke 21, and Mark 13 is the third parallel passage. And the phrasing that Matthew records adds another element to it. So here's Matthew 24, verse 1 and following. "And having gone forth, Jesus departed from the temple, and his disciples came near to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said, 'Do you not see all these? Truly I say to you, there may not be left here a stone on a stone that will not be thrown down.' And while he is sitting on the Mount of Olives," so he makes this statement, and then he goes out to the mountain, "and the disciples came near to him by himself, saying, 'Tell us, when will these be?'" When, Lord? When is this temple going to be destroyed? "And what is the sign of your coming?" Now, taken as given here, it's at least possible, I certainly think it's probable, that they are identifying, they're equating the destruction of the temple with Jesus' coming. And we've been conditioned to think this means coming visibly, bodily, returning to earth. But as you know, that's not the coming at all that I see. As we'll look at, it's the coming of the Son of Man in judgment against Jerusalem and into his kingdom. When will these things be? What is the sign of your coming and of the full end of the age? Now, again, we've been conditioned to read this as the end of time, like the end of all things. But that's not what they're asking. So this word full end, as it's translated here, is the word soon telos, or at least a form of that word. Now, I've trained you, I've taught you, telos has a connotation, a meaning that means more than simply the end, right? What is it? Show me how smart you all are that you're learning. What does the Greek word telos add to the concept of end? It does include the idea of end, but there's an emphasis more than simply something ceasing, right? Something stopping. Yeah, very good, Christian Cross. It has the idea of goal. Right? It's not that something is just over. It's over because it has reached its goal. So, what is the sign of your coming and the end having reached the goal of the age? That's adding a few words, but that's the idea. When will the consummation of the age appear? So, in the minds of the disciples, these are all speaking of the same thing. The destruction of the temple called to mind for the disciples the Son of Man coming into his kingdom and the age reaching its goal. As we will see, going through this Olivet discourse, this all points to the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. That is the end of the, can we call it the Jewish age, the Old Covenant era? This is what Zechariah talked about when God says basically he's bringing to an end the covenant that he made with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. It's his final curses, his final wrath on Jerusalem, on the Jews. Probably after 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, we will go through all of the Gospel of Matthew and see that this is really the theme and the message of Matthew all the way through. It's exposing the wickedness and hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the chief priests and the scribes, the Jewish leaders. And that it's really one significant condemnation of them. That's the recurring theme throughout. And they should have seen it coming. Jesus warned them again and again and again. Connie Steffen, hello. I don't know if we've met before. Says the end of the world means the end of the age. Well, he doesn't use the word world here, and the word world certainly does not always mean age. But the goal of this age is God's judgment on Jerusalem. If you go back and start in Matthew 20 and read 20, 21, 22, 23, leading up to 24, 23 is the woes against the wicked Pharisees and the scribes, hypocrites. And he ends chapter 23 with, or at least that section with, behold, Jerusalem, your house is left to you desolate. I'm going to destroy your house, the temple. And he uses different parables to warn them that he is coming in judgment and wrath against them. Chapter 24 follows in on all that and continues the theme. So Jesus is not looking at something thousands of years in his future, but in the very near term for his audience. And we will see that as we go through Luke 21 with greater detail. And we'll pick that up tomorrow. What I want to do with the rest of our time here is take you back again to Daniel. Okay, there's a couple of passages in Daniel. And again, I go through this in much more detail in that series, Kingdom in the Last Days. So next week, while I'm away, go through that series. I think it's about a week long. I think there are 4 or 5 lessons, and and walk through some of these Daniel passages to refresh your memory on some of these terms and concepts that show up here. All right, so in Daniel 7, and I'm not gonna go through all of it because that's why I'm encouraging you to watch that video series. Daniel sees 4 beasts, and we have looked at these 4 beasts in detail. They correlate to the statue that has 4 sections in Daniel 2. In Daniel 7, there are 4 beasts. They represent 4 kingdoms, and they are the kingdoms of Babylon, Persia, or Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And it's in the days of that 4th kingdom, the Roman Empire, that God establishes his kingdom, the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven. And he's going to crush all the other kingdoms and build his kingdom over the entire earth. This is not something that we are waiting for after the rapture and tribulation. No, it started at the time of the Roman Empire in the 1st century. And then in chapter 7, Daniel sees this vision. He says, I was watching in the night visions, and lo, there was, as it were, a son of man. This is what Jesus refers to himself as again and again, the Son of Man. And the Son of Man was coming upon the clouds of heaven. The Son of Man coming upon the clouds of heaven, and he came as far as the Ancient of Days. Now, I know there's some controversy over some of this, and what does this mean? I'm not persuaded that this should be translated a different way, so I'm gonna continue on as written here. By the way, I'm reading from the Septuagint. For those of you that know what I'm talking about, great. For those of you who don't, it's in my opinion, it's not worth it, at least for now. I don't know that it drastically changes anything. So again, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, just know that I am aware, but I'm not going to go there here because I'm not persuaded. But even if I were persuaded, I'm not sure it would change anything. So anyway, the Son of Man coming upon the clouds as far as the Ancient of Days. So the Son of Man here is not the Ancient of Days. He's coming to the Ancient of Days. The Son of Man coming upon the clouds to the Ancient of Days, and the attendants were present with him, and royal authority was given to him. Royal authority given to the Son of Man. So this vision is of the Son of Man coming upon the clouds to the Ancient of Days to receive his kingdom. And royal authority was given to him, and all the nations of the earth, according to posterity, and all honor was serving him. So the Son of Man receives his kingdom, his authority, from the Ancient of Days, and all the nations of the earth serve him. Who? The Son of Man. His authority is an everlasting authority which will never be removed, and his kingship which will never perish. Okay, so in this vision, Daniel sees after the 4th beast, in the time of the 4th beast, which we now know is the Roman Empire, the Son of Man coming upon the clouds to the Ancient of Days, and the Ancient of Days bestows upon him his kingdom over all the nations of the earth. The Son of Man coming, in this text, is coming to the Ancient of Days to receive his kingdom, not coming back to earth. Now, those of you who've been with us, you've heard me say that over and over again, so this is not new. But if this is new to you, it's going to strike you strange and certainly opposed to everything you've been taught. But that's the vision. That's the word coming. He's coming to receive a kingdom, not coming back to earth in that portion. Then in Daniel 8, Daniel sees another vision, and it has to do with goats and so on. And I go through it in more detail in the other series. Let me just get to this part. And I realize I'm going so fast, and there are lots of questions, but hopefully the other seers will answer some of those for you. So this being says, this heavenly being says to Daniel, "Lo, I am telling you what will take place at the end of the wrath against the sons of the people, for yet will remain the appropriate time of consummation." So, to just put it briefly, Daniel sees the Medo-Persia Empire conquering Babylon. Then he sees Alexander the Great destroying and conquering the Medo-Persian Empire, which is all yet future for Daniel. But along the way here, this angel says to Daniel, "I am telling you, I'm saying to you, the things that will be in the last." The word here, end, is not telos, it's last, at least in the Greek. "In the last of the wrath or anger against the sons of your people." Some of the Greek manuscripts have your people. Who is Daniel's people? Israel, the Jews. So Daniel is being shown things that will take place in the last of the anger against the sons of Daniel's people, the Jews. "For yet will be or remain the hour," literally the hour of the soon telos. This is the same word as in Matthew 24, the end. Now, he doesn't use the word age here, but it's very similar terminology to the Olivet discourse, the end of the age, the last wrath on the sons of the people. What I think Daniel is being told here is there is a final expression of the wrath and anger of God against the Jewish people. That will be the end of the age. That will be the goal. The age will have reached its goal as God pours out his final judgment and the curses of the old covenant upon the Jews. And that will include the destruction of the temple and the Jewish people in Jerusalem, which we know happened in 70 AD. So what I think is happening when the disciples ask, "When will these things be? What's the sign of your coming?" Both coming into your kingdom and coming against Jerusalem, and the end goal of the age. I'm persuaded these Jewish disciples knew the prophecies of Daniel. And this would also tie in together Daniel 9, the famous 70 weeks that talked about the desolation of Jerusalem. All of these prophecies in Daniel coming together here, and the disciples say, "Oh, Jesus, you're telling us that not one stone will be left upon another in Jerusalem." That means the end of the wrath, the goal of the wrath, the final wrath upon the Jewish people is coming. What's the sign? How will we know? We want to be aware of the timing of this. And Jesus will go on through Luke 21 and tell them what the sign is. And that's what we'll pick up tomorrow. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm persuaded that this ties into the wrath that we read about at the beginning in 1 Thessalonians. So we'll see if we can make that connection as we go. All right. Any comments here I need to look at? Sana says, "So the disciples already knew this was talking about fulfilling of the prophecy. How I've always missed that." Yeah. So did I help you see that, Sana? Yep. Lots of good answers here. Love that. Love that. Kathy says, "Would you put that Kingdom in the Last Days study in the show notes for us to make it easier to find?" I will. I will do that as soon as we log off here. Connie says he's being presented to God. Yeah, is that the Daniel 7 I was just reading? Yeah, I think so. All right, so if you want to prepare for tomorrow, read the rest of Luke 21, at least this vision, and or this prophecy, and see if you can figure it out. And we'll come back tomorrow and walk through it together. Have a good one, everyone. Grace and peace to you.